Welcome, everyone. This will be a rather quick update to the efforts and activities of the All Hazards Consortium's Multi-State Fleet Response Working Group and its subcommittees. We haven't done an update here for this group in a little bit, so this will have a lot of information. We are recording this, and there will be subsequent videos produced that will be subsections of this. We've reduced a lot of slides just to get to the point to hit the highlight items. We'll cover about 40% of what there is high level, and then we'll have sub videos. You'll get a list of all those coming out for more in-depth training. So I'm really excited about this update. We haven't had this thorough an update in a while. So very pleased. So if you're new to this group, you're going to have you're going to get an exposure to some of the community people and the products and so forth. If you've been around it for a while, you'll see some things that are new and some new initiatives that are just moving forward in the future as of this past month. So we want to welcome folks that are new to the consortium and its activities, and certainly those that have been involved with us for a while and part of our working groups and subcommittees and solution things. So today we're going to talk about a new approach for disruption management. Disruption management, we use that term because disruptions are no longer hurricanes and tornadoes. There's many things, right? It's social media, it's cyber, it's a lot of things. You're going to learn about a new trusted place in a community that produces solution, which is my favorite part, is the brainstorming of how we solve these solutions quickly. You're going to learn about an innovative, unique set of products and how to engage with this group. So let's jump into it today. Our agenda, we'll talk a little bit about who is behind all this, the All Hazards Consortium, why it exists, and how does it support the private sector through its working groups, particularly the Fleet Response and SICE working group. What are the current problems, some of the problems being worked, what are the tools, results, and what's coming, what's new and on the horizon, which is very exciting, and then lastly, how you can engage. Our chair for the Fleet Response Working Group, Mike Sapone. Mike, are you on yet? I know he was planning on running a little bit late. Okay, Mike will be on with us in a few minutes. Mike is the chair of the Fleet Response Working Group. It's co-chaired by Tony Hurley, formerly with First Energy, now with Witt O'Brien. And then Kent Kildaw from Verizon is on. He's the chair of our Sensitive Information Sharing Environment Work Group. And I asked Kent if he could jump on and just provide some perspectives of this effort and how it really helps private sector from his vantage point, do their jobs better. Planning and response and so forth. So Kent, let me turn it over to you for some opening comments.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it, and good morning, everyone. One of the things that I understand is that we all have a lot of opportunities to engage in groups that are working on these things, but sometimes those groups generate great conversation and not a lot of operational impact. I would suggest to this team that the All Hazards Consortium is highly focused on creating operational impact that will help all of its participants increase its ability to respond to events. Regardless of what type. I would also say that it's one of the places I've seen the most impact as far as creating public-private partnerships, as well as business-to-business relationships as well, and the ability to collaborate and help create better outcomes during our response to major events. One of the things that we focused on a couple of years ago as a team was trying to really figure out where we could operationalize things and have a better tool set, a better solution set for all of the participants. And I think that with the team members' participation and some leadership from Tom, the team has really done that, and I know we'll be talking a lot about the specifics around that over the course of the next 50 minutes, so I won't dig into a lot of detail there. But I think that it's a critical time that we refocus on these things. Tom made reference to having a conversation with the FCC I know that I am seeing, and I'm sure that most of you are seeing, increased interest in that business-to-business collaboration across sectors as we work on responses, as well as our public sector partners looking for additional insights into what we're doing during the response. And I think this tool set, helps provide some solutions for that as well. So with that, Tom, I will, keep my comments short today. I know there's a lot of stuff to cover here. And unless anyone has any questions for me, I'm going to hand it back to Tom.
Okay.
Kevin.
Okay, Kent, thank you very much. So let's jump into our slide. First up, who is the consortium? What is the All Hands Consortium? So there'll be a sub video released about this that's about 20 minutes long. I won't go through all that right now, but basically the consortium is a 501c3 nonprofit started by states in DC, Maryland, Virginia. It facilitates this trusted community and serves as a liaison between industry and government. We focus on pretty much anything that causes disruptions, disasters, physical cybersecurity, information sharing, problem solving, that kind of thing. And as Kent said, we really focus our working groups on developing solutions, things you can use today, tomorrow, quickly. We work with federal government for long-term investments, which we leverage. There's those products, those investment dollars, and so forth. And of late, we become kind of a resource for better, more reliable information that's not publicly available, and a pool of growing experts that are professionals in their operational fields in government and industry. And it really attracts these folks because we're solving problems. So why does the AHC exist? I get asked this all the time. So the best way I can tell you this is just a little bit of background. I came out of the private sector. I retired from the telecom space in 2003 and started working in this space with my home state, Maryland. And they were trying to pull together a group of states to work with private sector. And right away, you could tell there was no trust. Okay. People didn't know what to do, what to focus on. Government was timid and limited by, things they could ask for. Private sector was, half private sector was trying to sell things. The other part of the private sector, which were regulated entities, were trying to figure out, is this relevant? Is this a safe environment for me to talk? It's a culture that's been bred because of a lot of different reasons, good and bad. I'm not saying it's bad, but you can't get things done until Sandy hit, is in my story. So during Sandy, this was a massive, massive storm causing disruptions within pretty much every sector: electric, housing, rail, food, fuel, pharmacies. It was a nightmare. And it covered 9 states by the time it was done, and it was massive snowfalls, if you remember, very heavy, wet snowfalls right after Sandy, and it was during an election. It's crazy. So New Jersey was holding their daily private sector calls. I'll never forget this. Steve Gutkin was running that. Joe Picciano and Sherry Black and some folks were there, and they ran down the list. Here's what the schools are going to do. Here's what police is doing, DOT. And they finished the rap sheet for government, and there was like 1,000 people on this call. And Steve finally said, "Okay, is there somebody need any help at the moment?" And it was crickets. And then all of a sudden, a gentleman piped up, says, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm with the water treatment facility in southern New Jersey. We got about 6 hours of fuel left on our generators. If we go down, millions of people are going to be without, water for months. Crickets. And finally, I'll never forget it. Steve said, "Well, does anybody got anything that can help?" And right away, a gentleman from the fuel sector, "Yep, I got fuel. I can deliver it, but I need a police escort because I don't want my drivers getting stuck or robbed or whatever." And Jersey State Police was on the phone. They said, "You know what? We can help you. We got choppers. We can meet up." And they solved it right there on the call. And they took a sidebar call, and the next day they reported out. But I'll never forget hearing that, and that was my aha moment of how public-private partnerships really need to work. When it is bad enough, all the guardrails go down, and now we're all just people trying to save lives. And that was the culture that gave birth, if you will, to the Fleet Response Working Group, which stood up. And so what the AHC has done is leverage these trusted private sector relationships. We aggregated data and information during Sandy to help find hundreds of thousands of housing units for citizens and workers, open rail lines that the Tom Farmer at the American Rail Association shared with us. We pushed out to the private sector to get crews in and out, and workers and finance people and bank people in and out of the area. We reduced social media misinformation, looting. We were able to catch looting early because of social media, and we actually, one story, a social media guy was sending out an SOS. He was drowning in a truck in the flooding river, Tom's River, and the folks in the private sector partners picked it up, sent to Jersey police, and a chopper pulled him out of the truck. It was amazing. All this was done by the private sector to help government do this. We reduced regional toll station delays. I remember John Shaner, the first chair of the work group, called me and, "Hey, Tom, we got a problem. We got Jersey on the phone," and we were able to resolve this thing in one phone call. This was a big issue because toll stations were backing up for quite a while, and this caused all kinds of information delays. And lastly, we were able to get hold of real-time data from the private sector communications sector that provided us status of sat dishes on top of hotels, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hotels, pharmacies, food, fuel, so forth. That data became the central planning data for FEMA during the Sandy response. Isn't that interesting? And we took hold of that. We put an email together. We covered liability for the vendor, and so there was no blowback, and it was great. At the end of Sandy, in early December, I believe it was, Secretary Napolitano called us and said, "Hey, I want to thank you all." And then she went off script. She said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yes." I said, "Yes." She goes, "How did you guys do that so quickly? How did you marshal that amount of information and help in less than a day?" And it was a very simple answer. It didn't take a day. It took years. We had been working with these companies for years to build trust. And it's the trust between the people that made the data flow, that made the guardrails come down, that brought the spirit about to help each other. So at the end of the day, the consortium exists to build trust between operational professionals in industry and government, human beings, not machines, right? Humans, right? And how do we do it? We sustain the planning environment and focus on problem-solving issues. That's why the consortium exists. So let me give you some examples. One of the things we do is sync government and private sector operations effort. A good example of this synchronizing occurred during Hurricane Matthew. That was a major storm. The electric sector and a lot of folks were bracing for potential massive resource movements into Florida and South Carolina and Georgia. And they all needed official copies of declarations and waivers and so forth. Up until that point, it was really a state-by-state effort. It was emails and attachments. People were getting the wrong information. They were getting press releases, which don't count. They were getting websites, which don't count. If the driver gets pulled over by a policeman and he doesn't have the right documentation, he can get fined, he can get tickets, and they can get penalties, right? So there was no standard process to do it. So that gave way very quickly. The state of Florida, North Carolina, Virginia worked with the AHC. We created a quick website. We created a process to vet information, to weed out all the stuff that was not a valid document, put it all in one place, right? If the truck drivers were pulled over, they had the right documentation because we did the vetting. Our community did the vetting and posting and so forth. This website, now called Storm Central, became extremely effective and was formalized into the Storm Central website framework, which has been used in every major event in on the eastern U.S., if you will, since Hurricane Matthew in 2016. The other thing that the consortium does is this cross-sector coordination. This is really difficult. A great example of this was in 2017 with Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria, when multiple sectors relied on each other in order to respond and recover from multiple disruptions. If you all remember, this was a trifecta of 3 storms impacting the Gulf Coast, Florida, and so forth. We know from experience the electric sector relies on water, communications, fuel, and transportation sectors. The communications sector relies on transportation, fuel, and power. Virtually all of responders rely on transportation, lodging, and fuel sectors for them to complete their missions. Water, healthcare, finance, retail, and a number of other sectors and subsectors all rely on each other. So how do you bring them together? Well, we turned to our work groups. And very quickly, in 2015, we used a format that we created in 2015. We used it in 2017. But during Hurricane Joaquin, if you all remember, the problem led to an establishment of the Fleet Working Group put together information from multiple resources, combined it into a single cross-sector update report, and shared it out with multiple states, federal agencies, and industry as a whole. This is still in its original form. It's a very simple approach that has kept thousands of organizations abreast of major activities within multiple sectors, which helps coordinate response efforts and reduce delays, which saves lives. Many of you have seen these. We use them for pretty much every major storm when the Fleet Working Group activates. So how does the consortium support the private sector? If you're in the private sector on this call, you'll love this because operations people design this. So the consortium stands up committees and working groups to address specific problems. So we organize all of our work groups and committees by areas of interest to solve problems. The Fleet Working Group, for example, was stood up and established to address resource movements across state lines during power restoration. Prior to that, it was a nightmare. The Fleet Working Group was able to bring some order to the chaos and really work with states. The Sensitive Information Sharing Environment, or SICE Working Group, was established to develop a trust information framework that protected private sector information from non-operational use during disasters. We had one storm in late 2013. We sent out emails to support fleet movement. It got into the wrong hands and caused some problems. So we couldn't. Now we decided we can't do attachments and emails. So that's what gave birth to the SICE. Upper right corner, you'll see the State Liaison Work Group was designed to better connect state emergency operations centers and their private sector liaisons to the Fleet Working Group members during disasters to improve communications and coordination directly with state EOCs. These problem-solving committees that we form, called use case committees, are formed for a specific problem, and they use a specific 6-step process to develop solutions, which you can see some of the use cases they're focused on now. And lastly, the newly formed upper left corner, the Applied Operational Research Institute, was formed to help coordinate research and development efforts and investments between federal government and industry. And to address big national problems that are too big for any one organization that directly impact national resilience for our critical infrastructure and our citizens. So you're looking at now on the screen the very first set of use cases the Fleet Working Group put together. John Shaner and Jim Nowak, Aaron Strickland, Mike Sapona, a number of them put this list together. And they've solved many of these with education and policy and data. But this has grown now to a little farther reach. So let's talk about how we support industry as a whole. 4 major areas: planning, operations, operational information sharing, and research. I won't go through all of these, but we'll have another video that'll address these in detail. The big thing is the operational information sharing, the third bullet. That is really the crux of the matter that builds trust. When you can share information with trusted people to solve a problem, you've really created trust within those folks. But this is all going on behind the curtain. Many of you don't realize all the people involved, hundreds. They're involved in the planning efforts. When there's operational movement, many of the sectors stand up their systems. We plug right into that. And lastly, on the research front, we have a great partnership with the federal government. They provide dollars and people and technology for us to create research for you, the private sector, while you're sleeping. It's a fantastic opportunity here. But we support a lot of this stuff happens behind the curtain during blue sky days so that we can work together during black sky days. Specifically, what do we do for the electric sector? So the electric sector drives many of the use cases because they've been around us the longest, okay? So we attend weekly. We are on the phone with electric sector folks, states, and so forth through our different work groups. They meet every Friday morning, working issues. Operationally, we coordinate with their RMAG process their communications to the federal government. We are, when we activate, we send representatives down to EEI, the trade association, right there in Washington. We have staff right there to help provide kind of virtual help desk and get information and resources quickly. We've integrated into the ramp-up system. The ramp-up system is a technology that the private sector develops for mutual assistance. We are now getting automated alerts, and we're looking to expand upon that to automate some of the alerting of the states, which is the whole point, to save time. We've developed daily dashboards with Esri and a technology called GeoCollaborate that has been a great tool. You'll see it in just a minute. We find and test new data sets all the time. We organized a GIS committee for this specific purpose, and then we operate the SICE, which is the framework to share information that's protected from FOIA, from non-operational use, from regulators, so forth. It's just B2B, and it's a fantastic capability. So who is engaged? I think over the last 16 years, we've had representatives from pretty much every sector and subsector. This slide gives you an idea of the breadth of participants in our disaster support activities, workshops, webinars, use case committees, and reports. So it's fairly broad. It's national and international. It goes into Canada and other operational partners abroad. Great reach. So what problems are being worked on? Well, we keep a use case inventory. I won't go through this in detail on this video, but each one of these has its own video. These are all problems that we turn into use cases. A use case is a process. We define the people, we define the problem, the information needed, the security level to protect it. What are the impacts of that problem financially, operationally, optics, corporate brand. So we get everybody on the same page. Then we spend, once that's done, we focus on developing solutions, which can be documents, training, data sets, dashboards, third-party products, a new process. We've done it all through our work groups. And it's all designed to save time, reduce risk, increase safety and security, and really get the response going faster. So we've got categories of response, planning, and research, followed by security, analytics, and training. And again, I won't go through all of these, but I wanted to give you an idea of the breadth of the types of problem areas our committees and use case committee and working groups are addressing. It's quite impressive the way they've been able to move through this. Let me give you a case study of how we address a problem. So the problem in this case was increasing decision maker confidence in data, right? So decision makers are always trying to figure out how do operational decision makers better understand GIS data products and what they mean. The other half of the problem is where can GIS professionals go for the most reliable data? Which data sets and sources are the most reliable? You know, for weather, transportation routes, flooding imagery, situation awareness, declarations, waivers, fuel. It's a real challenge, right? So this gave birth to the establishment of the SICE GIS working group, made up of 11 utilities in 6 states initially. They started doing weekly calls. The rule for the SICE is we do 6 calls. If we can't find a solution, we dump it. We put it on we move it to the side. We work towards something else. So typically, if you can't find a solution in 6 calls, people are going to tune out. You're going to lose interest, and people are too busy. So we formed this working group. We had started having calls, and sure enough, we realized, wow, there's a lot of things we could do here. And they developed a number of things. Probably the most important thing they developed with a partnership with NASA and the ESIP Federation is this ORL standard. It's a federated standard with 10 criteria that private sector, states, and now federal agencies are using to agree that this data is reliable. It's ranked a 1, a 2, or 3, or a 4. It's fantastic. It allows us to share data and everybody knows what it means. This initiative has now given birth to an initiative called SICEnet. This is going to start out in 2020. You'll hear about it in just a minute. It basically shares ORL ranked and vetted data between state EOCs, industry, private sector, certainly, and federal government. So let's jump into some of the tools that are produced as far as these solutions go. First of all, we talk about the SICE, the Sensitive Information Sharing Environment. This is the place where all the tools are housed. First of all, it is a legal framework run by the private sector that allows private sector to control who is allowed in, what are they allowed to see, how, so it answers that question, who's looking at my data, information, and for what purpose. Now, most companies don't come in and start sharing data right away. They are consuming data. And over time, they build trust, and now, okay, they can, it's kind of a barter. But the SICE is a framework. It has a technology component. It has a policy and legal component. It's got an identity vetting component. And it runs an app store where all the products go at the end of the day. We wanted one place to store all that, which you'll see in just a minute. So the SICE organizes by use case committees. As you can see, here's several on the screen now. These were specific problems that we formed public and private sector stakeholders into a group, had 6 calls, and either came out with some early solutions or we moved on. And the good news is all of these had movement, which was really good. And we won't get into that in this video, or this webinar, but we'll talk about that later. So the SICE 2.0 environment is where the action is delivered, right? It's through this environment. This has been updated. We've streamlined the interface so it's much more friendly. It's much more mobile adaptive, which is great. We've improved the environment. So we have a login security. We've streamlined it with two-factor. So if I go to two-factor authentication, there we go. And this allows us to manage identity with every login. So private sector runs this, and they want to make sure everybody coming in there's been vetted, they're a member in good standing, they're not from overseas, they're an operational person, or it has a way of partitioning people like a honeycomb partitions its cells, so it's really nice. This will also be a place where we will house a media channel for training, general updates. We have a support system. We were just testing it the other day, so we'll have support tickets that we'll be able to take in for internal and operational use. Certainly you can access our app store, an area for secure chat, where we will use that for our communities. I'm not a big chat person, but I can tell you a lot of folks that are younger than I am are living on it day to day, and we needed a safe place for them to do that and organize and share information. And then we'll have operational alerts through this as well. And then finally, the App Store. This is a single, secure place for us to house all of the products, data sets, tools, training, everything will be accessed through the SICE App Store. So this has been streamlined as well. As you can see today, we have over 118 products from 24 authors in there. It's laid out like a bookstore environment, so you can search by name, by title, by anything you want, and it'll pull up the products that are relevant to usage. So once you're in there, then you can look at some of the specific products. So this is one of the first products we developed in 2016 during Winter Storm Jonas. This was a product called GeoCollaborate. It was funded by NASA, about a $5 million SBA grant, and it developed a very unique technology that allowed us to pull data together from various places and formats and put it all into one place. So the green states have federal declarations, the purple states have other declarations and waivers, and the red states have declarations. And so there's one place to get all the declarations and waivers, guidance from state, and the most accurate data we know of for flooding, weather, and transportation, and so forth. We've used this in every major event since January of 2016 to synchronize dozens of states, multiple sectors, so they at least have one place to go for common operating picture for fleet response. Another new product that came out last year is a regional routing service. This is done in partnership with EEI and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. When they turn this on, we alert our members, and they have a toll-free number you call and get turn-by-turn directions updated every 5 minutes. I think it's every 5 minutes or less. That gives you turn-by-turn right into the impact zone. So if you're delivering goods, if you're moving around, this is a great service. It's updated from multiple data sources, social media, state and federal sources, and they update it every 10 minutes. They got a lab of 9 people, I think, that I saw sitting there aggregating all this data. It's fantastic capability. It's not on all the time, but when it's activated, we're notified. We notify our subscribers, and they can use the service at will. We have a training guide on that as well, which we publish. This is one of the first initiatives that came out of Sandy, was the sharing of live information. So this is a live database, a dashboard. It's updated every minute. It basically is all of the status on or off of all of the routers at hundreds of thousands of locations. We hope to expand this this year through the sites, but it's real-time data. It gave us information. It was the same data we got during Sandy, now is on an app. And we're using this for a number of different factors to help people find resources in a disaster zone. Number one, it's good for planning. We're also looking to use this data as a predictive tool. So if we see a storm front coming from the west and we notice a lot of red dots behind it, the impacts of that storm could be pretty hard, and we can notify folks in front of that storm front. This is one of the initiatives we're working on this year. We have a number of dashboards that are provided by our Esri SICE team. These are all using the ranked and vetted data. They cover a variety of topics. It is the most reliable data in the country, as federated by this group of utility states and federal agencies. It's always on. It helps you make decisions quickly. Each board is set up for you to make a decision very fast. It's mobile friendly, and it has been very, very effective. Another tool I mentioned previously was the Storm Central website. This becomes a repository for all of our declarations and waivers for the current, past, and future storms. We have developed another pile of kind of a portfolio of road information. These are the vetted road data sets. We have a live dashboard that is always on, plus we have access to a number of other data sets that are air, land, and sea, ways, all kinds of things that's centralized in one place that we monitor. And as new ones come out, we're able to vet them and bring them in there. So it's a transportation central, if you will. We call it Road Central. Then we have this massive resource of data we've been building over the years, and this is really focused as a resource provider place. So if you need commercial generators, dry ice, warehouses, porta potties, this has thousands of locations and data sets of people who rent, supply, sell resources, and it's used by government and industry, and it grows with every disaster. One of our recent ones is during Hurricane Florence. There was a need for high water vehicles by Duke Energy to plant poles in floodwaters, right? Well, we were able, within 2 hours, we were able to map every provider of these high water vehicles. They were really track-driven vehicles, right? At the end, Duke got it from a partner company, but we had the database in place. So we now have a database of all of the track-driven pole-setting devices in the country, and we manage that twice a year to make sure that data is available. But these are data sets that our decision makers need and want. So what are the results of all this? I'm not going to go through all of them. In the invite, you had a attached report that we produced last year, I think in November. It's a 12-page report that really went through all of the results and impacts of the Fleet Response Working Group, the SICE Working Group, all of the use case committees, the products they produced, and the results that were attained. It was quite impressive. I got to say, reading it was pretty amazing when so many people just are freed to work together and to produce. It's amazing. And government's involved all along the way, maybe not leading the charge, but supporting the effort, sometimes leading the effort, most of the time supporting the effort with the private sector leading it is really a fantastic thing to watch. So some of the solutions that were produced, as I mentioned, that the first one is that routing hotline service that came out of our use case committees. We updated a lot of the GeoCollaborate daily dashboard, a lot of work on the operational readiness level effort for an online ranking tool. You can plug in a data set, answer some survey questions, and it'll rank the data to let you know if it's 1, which means it's ready to go. You can make decisions on it, or if it's a 4, which means it's a research data set. It's not quite ready. You can use it, but at your own risk. They created a library spreadsheet of these data sets in one place for our members. We integrated the SICE into the electric sector's ramp-up tool. We've built a number of different processes, if you will. One of the best ones, I think, that didn't get a lot of press last year, but in Pennsylvania, we started a fleet response working group model in Pennsylvania called the Endeavor Work Group. Pat Scholl is on the phone with us today. And that group worked a number of issues, but one of the most significant ones they worked on in Pennsylvania, when it's icy roads, they restricted trucks with empty trailers from driving. Why? Because a huge percentage of the accidents were caused by empty trucks that don't have enough weight to get over the mountains, or they get blown around or whatever. So they grounded all these trucks. Well, if you're delivering things and you drop off your load, now you got an empty truck, you're grounded, or you've been grounded. So working together through this work group, the consortium helped facilitate it. They came to an agreement on a 30% weight ballast. So as long as you have 30% of the truck rated weight, which is probably 20,000 pounds, let's say, in the truck, you're good. And they basically came to that conclusion on a phone call, and we got everybody to agree, okay, this is what we're going to do. State police is good with it. DOT is good with it. Okay, the private sector folks were good with it. They tested it. It seemed to work. And I understand now it may become permanent policy within PEMA, within the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, which is a fantastic accomplishment. And just a great example of how when there's trust, when people can work together and plan together, they can really accomplish a lot of things. So what's coming? We have a number of emerging initiatives. One of the big ones here is reducing fiber cuts. This came out of Hurricane Michael. The FCC issued a document that says, hey, telecom sector, we want you to coordinate better with utilities and reduce fiber cuts. Well, we pulled a work group together comprised of states and electric and comms, and we learned very quickly that it was the debris removal crews causing a lot of the issues. So we're working on an operational information exchange with states to alert the comms sector when they're issuing debris removal work orders. A second effort is going on between the telecom and utility sector to promote better training and integration, and that process is ongoing. We have another issue came up emerging with cyber attack. How does private sector coordinate with states post a cyber attack on the election system and the power grid? This is a fantastic tabletop exercise that they're going to create and then do a roadshow to help build a directory of state agency people across 7 agencies that would be involved in this type of cyber attack, state by state. Another big issue emerging is imagery. Right? How do we aggregate, vet, and rank the best imagery out there from public and private sector, from satellite, from high-level drone, low-level drone? How do we aggregate that stuff to help critical infrastructure damage assessments, maybe detect, respond, and prevent wildfires, flooding, and earthquakes? We've got a really good team of folks working that issue now within the GIS committee. Operationalizing federal research with states. The SICE is a great example. A lot of people don't know that DHS federal research has put over $1 million into development of the SICE technology and process and so forth. So they're very invested in this, and they want to see this work because it helps critical infrastructure. And then long term, we want to look at cross-sector predictive analytics. You know, if this happens over here, how's it going to affect me? If this happens in the water sector, how's it going to affect you in the food sector? We're looking at this long term, but these are some of the emerging initiatives that come out of it. And this next one, I think, is going to be a game changer. It's called SICEnet. I mentioned it earlier. This is a long time coming. It will use the SICE, which is now connected to DHS and the private sector. It'll now connect into state EOCs. So this will create a high-level, real-time data sharing environment that will focus on use case-related data. We're going to start with road availability data right from the state and local level. We're going to start in North Carolina and then move up to other states as we go. But this will help synchronize road availability data everywhere with states, with private sector, and with federal government. So one of the big problems is the synchronizing of data. We want to get off email and get to a point where we can work and start small and work gradually to build this out. But this will leverage the state web EOC systems and the Esri platform. We're going to look at, as I said, road and transportation related data first, but this will reduce delays, It'll improve coordination operationally. And the best part for me is it reduces email traffic and requests for information. Because you just go and watch. You don't need to email, hey, what's the status of this? It'll all be there. We're really, really excited about this initiative. DHS is behind it. We're working with North Carolina Now and a couple of private sector companies that are participating in this pilot. We hope to have this done here, hopefully end of March or April. We're also looking through some of our partners at artificial intelligence and social media alerting. DHS is using technology now that leverages social media and mines it down to get pretty accurate information. They use a combination of real human beings and artificial intelligence. There's several companies out there that do this, but we want to use it for focusing this type of technology on specific use cases. Wires down. Could we get better data and reliable data to determine a wire's down where and what kind is it? Wildfire detection, active shooters. They use this in Florida, and I think somebody told me they had a 43-minute head start on the event before it hit CNN or the major media. 45 minutes, okay, because of this analytic capability. It's fantastic. So we're going to be activating that this year, and we'll use that to support specific use cases as we go forward. Another emerging piece right now is this cross-sector interdependencies. We're working with DHS and Idaho National Labs on a visual tool that will allow us to capture information and learn how oil is impacted by disruptions in transportation or natural gas or telecom or water, but it's done visually with data. It's really fantastic capability. This is really to help planners understand where their vulnerabilities might be so they can shore them up. Great tool. I've seen it demonstrated, and many of the work group folks have seen this already. We're looking forward to that. I mentioned this earlier, this post-cyber attack response. This effort is really for private sector to know who do we call and what are the communication protocols with the governor's office, the election board, certainly the EOC, state police, DOT, during a cyber attack. It's really about cyber. And we've got a group putting together the tabletop exercise. In the end, this will produce a tabletop exercise. We'll go around state by state and pull out those names, know the protocols, so over time we have a directory for private sector and states to use of who to call in what state for this type of scenario attack. We're also looking at pushing more information to the field. How can we get better data into the hands of workers for information and updates? This is one we're working on with DHS and a few partners. Fantastic capability here. This can be for utilities. It can be for food, fuel, pharmacy, supply chain status. How can we better push information to the mobile device? And then some of you have seen this before. We're working with private sector data to determine where truck capable roads are. You can see the before Harvey data of truck movement and after Harvey data. We're looking for ways to operationalize this kind of data to help in real time, if we can, to help people know what roads are open right now or within the last hour based on real truck movement. It's a great capability. So these are just a couple of the initiatives going on right now. So let me just move to wrapping up here. How do you engage? Right now, we would invite all of you to register with the SICE. There's the website, www.siceusa.org. That'll plug you right into a quick little survey, and then you end up at our mind map. This is a tremendous resource. We keep it updated every week. It has information about what is the SICE, who are the stakeholders and partners, what are the SUSE solutions, what are the results and case studies, frequently asked questions. We put up opportunities to attend things. It's a one-stop shop, and we use it as a really interesting tool. We've run hundreds and hundreds of people through this, but we want you to register for the SICE. It's free. There's no cost, and you can use that, and then that'll put you into the cycle for alerts and things like that. And new this year is we're combining our Fleet Response Working Group annual meeting with the consortium and so forth into one event in June. It's going to call Resilience Exchange 2020. This will be a number of tracks and use case discussions, panel discussions, keynotes. It's over 3 days, June 14 through 16 in Baltimore, Maryland. Go to our website to get more information on that. So with that, I'm done. I just wanted to open up for any questions. And Mike Sapone, I heard you chime in. Let's take some questions or whatever, and then I'll provide you some opportunity to comment as well. Any questions at this point? Okay. Hearing none, let me introduce Mike Sapone. Mike is the chair of the Fleet Response Working Group. Mike works for Eversource Energy. And Mike, why don't I just let you provide some closing remarks?
Tom, I just want there's a lot of background noise, maybe other than Mike, if we could mute our phones.
Okay. Yeah. Can everyone mute your phones, please? Thanks. Thanks, Jim. Go ahead, Mike.
Is that better?
Much better.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks everyone for attending today or phoning in today. Appreciate everyone's interest in the Fleet Working Group. We've been around a long time. Tom's been our champion, but we're certainly looking to move this to the next step forward. And one big way is for people to get involved, sign up, and start helping us, bringing their energy, their expertise to the various use cases that we have. We have a number of great initiatives out there, but it takes people. We need people to get involved, and the Baltimore, Maryland Summit, if you will, workshop is a great opportunity to come in and bring that expertise, bring those ideas, so that we can help the private and public sector work together for the sake of the same people that the private sector serves from a business standpoint or a services standpoint are the same people that the public sector is trying to improve the lives of or return their lives back to normal after a disaster. And what we're doing with the Fleet Working Group is we're doing things like trying to get resources across the Canadian border faster. We've brought that full circle and now have a pretty slick plan in place, and it just proved itself this past event that we had in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire about 2 weeks ago. So it's working. It still takes people, it takes education, and it takes involvement. And that's just one of the many initiatives that we're exploring. So I really do appreciate. I had so many conflicts today. I couldn't jump on in the beginning, but I know that Tom and Kent did a really great job at introducing you or bringing you up to speed if you already knew about us. So with that, Tom, again, I'll turn it back over to you since I have to jump on a 10 o'clock interview with some individuals here at Eversource. So, really appreciate the opportunity to speak. I never get tired of speaking about this group and the all hazards because I truly believe in the benefit they're bringing to the people. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Are there any questions here before we drop? Okay, hearing none. Folks, want to thank you for your time. We will make this recording available, and there'll be some more detailed recordings on some of the other topics as I mentioned here earlier. So thank you all for attending. This concludes our webinar. Have a great day.